Hi guys, welcome. Hopefully everything is working right and you can hear me okay. I am Kelsi of Slime and Slashers. I almost forgot my own intro. Today we'll be talking about Feast, also known as Ritual by Graham Masterton, or vice versa. My copy is called Ritual. I'll show you the hardcover. Now, this is the hardcover, but there's an incredible paperback copy of this book, which has fabulous step back art. So if you open up the paperback, it's incredible. In fact, hold on. All I can show you is the cover, but when you open it up, the inside is so cool. It's like this kid in a pot, like so he's being cooked. By the way, guys, just to give you a little warning, we will be talking about spoilers today for the book Feast/Ritual because this is an official book club meeting for my book club that I run here on the YouTube channel. Our book club is called the Midnight Book Society. It is open to everybody. So yes, that was one of our book club reads for this month, the month of April. We also will have a future chat about the Book of the Damned by D.A. Fowler, which I'm really excited about. I loved Book of the Damned. I just finished it this past week. So I have actually got exciting news. I'm going to be joined by Alex, the Bookubus, for Book of the Damned, that live stream chat, which will be coming in May. It's on Cinco de Mayo, by the way. I know some people celebrate Cinco de Mayo and, do a lot of fun stuff that night. So hopefully we'll have some people join in for the chat. Again, that's May 5th. It's a Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. And Alex, the Bookubus, will be joining me to discuss Book of the Damned. But today we're here to discuss Ritual. And like I said, we will be talking about spoilers. I see we've got Mr. Morningstar in the chat. We've got Katie in the chat. We've got Cool Gamer. We've got Halco. Thank you all so very much for being here. And thank you to all of you who might be watching this after the fact, on demand, let's say. I guess you could call it on demand. Okay, so I am going to put up this banner and leave it up just so you guys know. But while we wait for some more people to join in, how about you guys let me know before we get into the book discussion what you've been reading? What are you currently reading? Are you enjoying whatever it is you're reading? I just want to find out, what everyone's digging into now. I finished Ritual, the book we're talking about today, about a week and a half ago. And I gotta tell you, it felt like a long experience. It felt like a freaking year like that passed between when I started the book and when I finished the book. And we'll get into why it felt that way. But currently, I am actually reading The Dark Half. I took off the slipcover. I'm reading The Dark Half by Stephen King. And I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm about 199 pages in, which is almost halfway into the book. It's 431 pages, so quite long, but I'm having a great time. And I'm actually going to be doing a live stream about this book with my friend Kat coming up on May 1st. So stay tuned for that if you want to, talk about The Dark Half. We're also going to be watching the movie adaptation and discussing that as well. So I'm going to watch the movie probably, this upcoming Saturday before our live chat on Sunday. So again, guys, drop what you're reading before we dive into the book discussion. I think there's a lot of different opinions on Ritual. I really do. I know some people thought it dragged a little bit, including me. I will just give you that spoiler right now. I thought it definitely dragged. What did you guys think about the book? Drop your ratings, drop your thoughts, drop your reading experience. Did it seem like a quick read to you? How long did it take you to finish? Did it feel excruciating, like for some of you? I know for me specifically, it honestly felt a little bit long. And as I teased, just to go back to what I was saying a second ago, let me show you. It's very small, but you could see here the paperback right here on your screen on the Goodreads tab. You could see the paperback cover copy and the kid coming out of that skull, the eye of the skull. And when you open it, if you did own a copy of it, again, you'd see this kid in a boiling pot. And I just think it's the coolest cover. Honestly, though, this is true with a lot of paperbacks from hell. I think sometimes the story does not measure up to the cover. And in my personal opinion, and if you guys agree or disagree, that is fine. And if you agree, that's fine too. But we could always have a respectful opinion, even if we don't always agree, and just discuss, why we feel a certain way. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as we're respectful of each other's opinions. So yeah, let's look at what the chat is saying. Ooh, in terms of currently reading, DJ says, just finished Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and just started April Fool's. It's a point horror book by, I believe, Richie Tankersley Cusick. Am I right? I have a copy. I just don't know. In fact, it's probably over on my book cart over there. I've got two book carts. and they're used mostly for storage because I don't have a lot of bookcases. So thank you, book carts, for existing. Otherwise, I would have a lot less room to store flippin' books. That is that is enjoyable that you're reading scary stories to tell in the dark. I've only read a few. I'm sure I've read it, since I was a kid. I'm sure I read it back then, but I don't recall like anything about it. And since I've become an adult, I've gone back and I guess reread some of the stories, and they're incredible. So hopefully you're enjoying April Fools as well, because I would love to get to that at some point. Katie says, currently reading The Babysitter 2 by R.L. Stine. I've got The Babysitter 1 on my TBR for April. However, I'm running out of time. But having said that, I'm making great progress on the dark half. And so if I could finish this in the next 2 days, I guess counting today. So if I can finish this by tomorrow, I might be able to get to Babysitter. And I also have The Thrill Club, which is a Fear Street book, on my TBR as well. I would love to get to those 2 books and check them off the list, but I'm feeling like stressed right now that I'm not going to finish everything. We'll see. Katie says, I was reading Nightblood, but put it down for now, hoping to finish it by the end of the month, but wasn't feeling it. I know what you mean. That happens to me sometimes. And that is how I felt while reading Feast a little bit / Ritual. I started it. It was one of my first reads of the month. I think it was like my 3rd read of the month. And it just felt like it took so long. Like I never felt excited to pick it back up. And I had a feeling that it could be like that. But I really loved the other Graham Masterton book I read, which was called Walkers. I don't know if any of you guys here have read anything else by Masterton. If so, please comment what you have read and if you liked it more or less than Ritual. Because I found that I liked Walkers a lot better. I found Walkers was more entertaining. Walkers was fun and zany. There were still some of the same problems in Walkers as there is in Feast, but there's some things in old school horror that I just expect to run into, like, the ridiculous, like, everyone wants the male main character type of trope. I don't know if you guys have noticed this in old school horror, but definitely. Like, for instance, Richard Layman, everyone says that Richard Layman, the author, is like a creepy old guy who's like writing about like gross sex stuff. However, while reading Feast, I felt like that about Graham Masterton. I'm like, why is no one complaining about Graham Masterton, but everyone is complaining about Richard Layman? I thought that was quite weird and funny. And because, I mean, to me, I felt there was a lot of random sex stuff, and everyone wanted the main character, Charlie, in this book. Not everyone, but people were coming on to him, and I'm like, come on, not everybody would want this main character. And I've got some funny thoughts to share. My friend Katie had some funny comments on Feast on our Discord channel that I will share, if that's okay, Katie. That made me laugh, and that was like, she was reading my mind about how I felt about the book. And I've got some other, like, Goodreads reviews that I might kind of read some parts of. I know my friend Amber read this book, and we will talk about her rating in a second. I'm just giving it a few more minutes before we really dive in deep. We've got Pax joining us in the chat. Hey, Pax, how you doing? So glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. Oh, DJ has read The Manitou by Graham Masterton and said he liked it quite a lot. Now, I have never read The Manitou, but definitely want to read The Manitou. Sorry, guys. It's really hot outside today. And just before I came on here, we have a farmer's market nearby, and we walked to go over there, and it was very hot. So I'm like, still kind of like, ugh, hot, sweaty. And I'm sorry, very exhausted. I need to flip and get in shape, I guess, if just a little walk is tiring me out. Mr. Morningstar says, just finished, and then I woke up. Kind of a philosophical horror, very thought-provoking. Sometimes it's nice to have these thought-provoking stories, especially kind of sprinkled in between more zany and absurd stories like Feast, which I think is a insanely absurd story for sure. I just could not buy into some of the things. I like cult stories. I like cannibal stories. There was something about the execution to me that didn't feel like it completely worked. But guys, again, I want to hear what you guys thought of the story. So tell me, did it work for you? What did you like about the book? What did you dislike? What is your official rating? Colton is here. Colton, hey, how you doing? So glad you're joining us today. I have my YouTube video up on my phone, and the chat is way faster on my phone than on the program itself. So I could see the chat messages faster over there. So that's why if I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking to make sure there's nobody new in the chat that I can't see up here. All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper. I'm going to pull up, and again, we're going to be talking spoilers. So if you guys don't want this book spoiled, please leave. But if you're okay, if you happen to not read the book and you're okay with the spoilers, then just stay, because I don't know if this book would be great for everybody. Like, is it really worth reading? I'm not sad I read it. I don't regret that I read it. I am, glad that I checked it off my list. I do think it's like kind of a notorious and special like book in terms of people talk about it a lot and the premise a lot, especially, it got a huge mention in Paperbacks from Hell. So did a book like, Toy Cemetery by William W. Johnstone. So there's a few books in Paperbacks from Hell, the nonfiction book, that talks about all this old school horror. There are a few books that are shouted out and really kind of, I guess described as being out there and like, oh, it makes you intrigued to read it. I do feel like there's some overhype in Paperbacks from Hell for certain titles. For instance, when I read Toy Cemetery, I was like, oh my god, Grady Hendrix was right in saying that it was batshit crazy. However, like, it was not like the greatest read ever. But do I think it's worth reading? Yes. I almost liked Toy Cemetery better because just with every turn of the page, I was like, this is weird. This is not adding up. This is so ridiculous and bonkers. Whereas this, it was more like, when is he going to do something? When is Charlie going to make something happen? And, it was a little ridiculous. I don't know how you guys feel about this as well. Charlie was going through, and of course we're talking about the main character, that's who Charlie is, who's traveling around with his son, and they're going to all these different restaurants because Charlie's job is to be a restaurant inspector where he, eats different meals at different places and decides to put it in this restaurant guide, this travel restaurant guide, or not. And he decides, on what to say about the place. So I just found it like ridiculous that he was going through these great lengths to go to this place, but so many people were warning him against going. And then there was just so many ridiculous turns and twists that I could not believe and fathom. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but there were just so many absurd parts in it. And again, this is why I want to bring up my Goodreads page again. So please humor me. I'm going to put this up right now. All right, so just so you could, I know it's kind of small for you guys probably, but just so you guys can see what I'm referring to here. All right, so as I said, my friend Amber, who has a wonderful YouTube channel, her channel is Secondhand Reader. Check her out. She's really been doing a lot for Old School April, and that means a lot to me. So I'm so glad she has been participating. So Amber rated this a 3-star rating. And she said, this was my first Graham Masterton. It was a great introduction. The story overall was good. I ended up on a 3-star. The writing is very sophisticated and the story was very intriguing. However, with all of that said, it was not a new favorite book for me. It was good, but honestly, that is where I usually stand with cannibal stories in general. If you have not picked up this author, I highly recommend you do, especially if you are a lover of the grittier horror with sophisticated production. This was a good time overall. So it almost seems like Amber even liked it a little bit more than me. I'm also going to give it a flat 3 stars, just so you guys know. My friend Katie, as you guys can see right here on your screen, she also gave it a 3-star rating. But if we scroll down further, you could see Grady Hendrix, who wrote Paperbacks from Hell, gave it a 5-star rating. And let's see what he has to say. He said, so far this year, I've read the powerful Thank You for Your Service, David Finkel's look at the shattered lives of servicemen returning from Iraq. I've read Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch, which won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. I've read Austin Grossman's deceptively experimental You, that transmutes the lead of early computer gaming into the gold of transcendence. I've read Ali Brosh's So Personal It Hurts Hyperbole and a Half, Neil Gaiman's emotional and revealing The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and 2 new books by Stephen King, one of America's greatest storytellers. None of them has provided me with as many moments of pure joy as a little mass market paperback from 1988 called Feast by Graham Masterton. John Waters once said, good taste is the enemy of art. If that's true, and I believe it is, then Feast is the Mona Lisa. So there's apparently more to this review. Let's see what this... I don't know if I completely agree with that. I wonder if he has any good quotes here. Because the one thing I did, or failed to do, I should say, while reading this book was mark passages in this book. I was more like, I need to get through this thing. Come on, come on. Yeah, it even says here, by chapter 4, Charlie, our main character, is obsessed with the exclusive dining club he hears about, called not Lee. Oh my god, could I be any more American? Reposiere, an exclusive dining club in the middle of nowhere that refuses to let him book a table, and consequently drives him bananas. After picking up a floozy at his hotel and spending a dirty night in her room, he returns to his room to find his son is missing. Most books hoard their plot twists, clutching them close to their chest, but Masterton has more twists up his sleeve than the average bear, and it's no spoiler to reveal that the Dining Society turns out to be a front for a cult of cannibals named the Celestines, and that Martin is in their clutches. It's also not a spoiler to reveal the first big wrinkle. The Celestines regard being eaten as the holiest of acts, and Martin has joined them of his own free will because he wants to be eaten as a peak religious experience. Compared to his dad's grubby, pointless life, participating in a transcendental auto-cannibalism orgy actually doesn't sound that bad. And throughout the book, the Celestines maintain the moral high ground. Wherever you think this book won't go, Masterton not only goes there, he reports back in lunacy-inducing detail. By the time the last pages turn, there have been amputee dwarf assassins, lots of sex, flaming dogs, one of the most harrowing scenes of self-cannibalism I've ever read, lots of betrayal, at least one over-the-top conspiracy theory, at least one death by explosive vomiting, and an actual appearance by Jesus Christ. That's right, Feast goes so far over the top that it requires a last-minute intervention by the Son of God himself in order to wrap things up. Throughout, Masterton enjoys himself immensely, and it's impossible to read Feast and not do the same. Masterton cares about his characters, and while his women may fall for the hero a bit too quickly, as I said, by the way, they are usually well-rounded and pursuing agendas of their own. His dialogue is funnier than it needs to be, his gore is gorier, and his sex is more explicit. If you prefer something more towards the middle of the road, there's always Dean Koontz. That's funny. Masterton books may not be the most tasteful, they may not be the most consistent, but you get the impression that he'll gladly hang up his hat and call it a day the minute they're not the most original. I do agree that it's an original premise in a way. I do. But I don't think that it's as exciting as he makes it sound. So Grady Hendrix there, wonderful review, awesome, thorough, but I just don't agree with it being that entertaining. When he describes it, it sounds awesome and zany and bonkers, and I'm like, yeah, like that is what makes me want to read these old school paperbacks. But when I get into it, it's like the moments of zaniness and craziness and gore are too, few and far between. However, some parts that I did like, the poor old lady he was staying at, I forgot her name, of course. I wish I would have marked some parts in the book, but I really didn't. The old lady he was staying at that used to run a bed and breakfast and was putting up Charlie just to be nice, who also lost a daughter to the cult. She was killed by the dwarf that Grady Hendrix referred to, and that part was really sad and sucky. Like when he comes in to see her body and it's all mutilated, I'm like, no, I was so sad. By the way, this is a good comment here. Katie says, I feel the same way. I compared it to a B horror movie in my review because there were so many don't go in there moments. Mrs. Kemp is the name of the woman who was killed, and I was sad. That's the one character I really, really did like. I liked Mrs. Kemp, and she was the only person not involved in the apparent conspiracy. So when we get towards the end of the book, we find out that the whole flippin' town is involved in this conspiracy. Everyone's into this dining society cult, and they're, all up for roping more people in. However, they spend a lot of time trying to dissuade Charlie from going. And yet they, apparently did want to rope his son Martin into it. So I don't know. It was very kind of confusing. They wanted him to go. They didn't want him to go. Very weird. So, I will say the Jesus Christ thing, I did like the end of the book a lot. And let's talk about the ending real quick. So the very, very end, and this is big spoiler stuff, Charlie, he seemingly defeats the cult. The cult, blows up because Jesus Christ comes down and is like, you misinterpreted the flippin' the thing that you were, doing. You misinterpreted the Bible. Oh, it's wrong. You're summoning a demon, dude. And then the demon comes and, everything blows up. And people are, suffering, essentially, that thought that they were going to get, a holy experience. It was a totally different experience than what they thought. So, you know, everything goes to hell. And Charlie's like, yeah, we survived. I saved Martin. And then he's got his girlfriend with him, or his, you know, going to be girlfriend, it looks like. And then they're driving off and he's like, I want to burn them all to the ground. So I knew right there when there was more pages after that something was going to go down. So here's the big spoiler. Charlie ends up dying. The dwarf is not dead like we thought, even though he was floating motionless in the flippin' bayou in New Orleans, by the way. Also, I live in New Orleans, so seeing that this actually wound up in New Orleans and that our big crescendo was taking place there in Louisiana, I was like, that's crazy. That's awesome. Another scene in New Orleans is when he visits that guy and they go and of course I forgot that guy's. I forgot everyone's name just because like none of these characters held my attention except for Charlie. Like, I mean, obviously we spent the most of the time with him. But you know, the guy with the dog who lived in New Orleans or Louisiana. And he ends up dying and his dog dies too. That's the burning dog, and that was really sad. But that was a cool part. And also, by the way, Charlie is such a good guy in the book that he tries to save the guys who just tried to kill him. Also absurd and ridiculous. He goes down there and he's like, oh, I can't get them. But yeah, the dwarf just apparently doesn't die. Maybe he is, you know, supernatural. I don't know, but somehow, and he's not a real, you know, shorter person. He has cut off his own limbs. That's why he's so short. But yes, I was just flabbergasted that he was still alive. However, I like the sad, morose ending to where Charlie's not going to make it. He went through all of that. You think he's victorious, but nope, bitch. He gets cut down by the flippin' dwarf who has been chasing him all along, who really put this whole story in motion, if you think about it, because he's the one who appears outside the restaurant, and he's the one who kind of grabs Martin's attention and is apparently whispering to Martin in the parking lot before Charlie gets back out to the parking lot. So yeah, the dwarf foils everything. He foils the happy ending. But personally, I like that. I did like the very, very end, but it just took so long to get there. I personally think that the story overall could have been easily 150 pages shorter. I mean, we've got so much going on. Like, Charlie is traveling all around. Oh, my son is gone. Oh, no big deal. Let me go and try to solve this. He goes to all these lengths. He does try, but then all of a sudden he meets this woman reporter and she is like, you know, talking with him and he's already thinking about being with her. And, you know, then they're like, let's drive to New Orleans and like all this stuff. It's like, come on, dude. And I do like, there is another great review on Goodreads. Where is it? Where it's like 1 second he's like, Mrs. Kemp is dead, and the next second he's like singing to Bob Seger. Oh, Katie, now I see your review here. I wasn't seeing it before. Here, let's see what, if that's okay, Katie, let's see what you have to say in your review. Man, oh man, I'll be chewing on this one for a while. I like that. It's like a pun. There's just something about cannibalism and body horror that burrows its way into my brain and refuses to leave. And this book was no exception. The gore was very well done. It was every bit stomach-turning and cringy and made up for the unneeded amount of filler content between important scenes. I really think this book could have easily been 100 pages shorter. That's what I just said, yes, if not more. That being said, I do think the ending was well done. Yes, exactly what I said. Oh my god, we're like the same person. It was like dramatically gory, over the top, and perfect for this type of book. It was actually the only part of the book that I felt moved at an appropriate pace. Yes, Katie, yes, that is exactly what I felt. Oh my god, we're like on the exact same page. She says, overall, I'm glad I read this book and I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys gore and can read a book without taking it too seriously. It's a lot of frightening fun and a great way to ruin your appetite. Agree. There are some good gory parts in here. Like, oh my god, my favorite part, and I want to also mention something else Katie said, but it was something she said on our Discord channel. So, Katie says, I have a weird copy of this book. I'm about 155 pages in, but only on chapter 8. Finally, something is happening, but man, I feel like Charlie is an idiot. I said, ha ha ha. I am so glad someone said it besides me thinking it myself. Charlie's dialogue is absurd. He really is an idiot. He does the dumbest things, and just wait until you get further along. And she says, oh man, it gets worse. I already want to just yell at him through the book to tell him to knock it off. Yes, Katie, I am on the same page as you. That is fantastic analysis right there. And just to come back on camera, the thing that I think is the stupidest that Charlie does is he wants to infiltrate the cult. And one of the things he thinks is going to work is by trying to join the cult. So they're in New Orleans, him and like his reporter, about to be new girlfriend. And they're like, okay, how can we get Martin? How can we infiltrate? He's like, okay, I'll go to this, I'll try to pretend like I'm somebody else and, hope that they don't ask for my ID. So he goes in and they say, welcome, welcome, we're glad you're here. And but let me back up a second. Before he goes, he tells the girlfriend or the would-be girlfriend, I'm going to try to join this. She goes, but what if, they try to make you eat your own flesh? He's like, I think I can get into this without having to eat my own flesh or anybody else's. Yeah, right. I knew right there. I was like, there's no way he's this naive that he thinks he's just going to waltz in, asked to become like a guide, which are the people in the cult who don't have to cut off their limbs, and everything would just be fine. Oh, I'm a chef, and he's not even a chef. So he goes in, he tries the I'm a chef thing, and already they're on to him. They're like, oh, okay. But, Charlie doesn't think they are. Charlie thinks everything is fine. So they're like, we're going to have to ask you to cut off your finger, by the way, and eat it right now, right here. Do it. So all of this happens. What he thought about, the whole, oh, I'm not going to have to do it thing goes right out the window. Charlie, you moron. Like, how did you expect not to have to cut off a finger or, like, eat your own flesh? That part was sick. That was well done when he was, like, eating his finger and, even cooking it and the description of that. I liked, like, those parts. And just the parts of, the end where they're in the kitchen and they're, like, describing people cutting off their penises and, like their boobs. Like, and, like, oh my God, this is insane. So I really did like the climax. As Katie said perfectly, Katie, you just, like, perfectly said it all. Like, it felt like a good pace the whole end, but like the lengths we took to get there, it just was exhausting. Like when Charlie was going out from hideout to hideout, like first he's at the hotel, then he's all of a sudden in the cult, but they mysteriously let him go, then they're following him, and somehow they find him on like in a back roads place in the middle of nowhere. They find him, even though the whole way to this back roads place with this guy who just happened to have a connection with the cult. His wife was, indoctored into the cult and he lost his wife to it. Just so happens everyone in Louisiana is into this cult, or almost everybody, which is absurd. So very ridiculous stuff that you have to suspend your disbelief. I mean, that's nothing new in books that you have to suspend your disbelief, but still kind of absurd when you really think about it, that so many people in New Orleans would know about this or be involved in this, and just out there. And the whole fact that they're looking behind them on the road as they're driving to this place and see nobody, but then later there are people there. And of course, Charlie doesn't mind having sex along the way. Like, after his son gets taken and the new girlfriend I talked about, he's just like, yeah, whatevs. Let's just mess around a little bit while we're, just killing time anyway till I can get my son back. Who cares? Katie has another great thing. After learning how many people are tied to this, how does he not realize that, of course, he will be followed as he's wandering around New Orleans with his girlfriend? I know. It's just so ridiculous. And Katie at least likes the ending. It's cheesy and satisfying, she says. I agree. Will Erickson, who co-wrote and helped with Paperbacks from Hell, gave this a 3-star rating. Same rating as me. Same rating as Amber, who I mentioned earlier from Secondhand Reader. Then this is a great and a good point. This is a great review here. I want to pop this up real fast again. I love to share other people's opinions, guys. So if you don't like that, I'm sorry, but I like to include more opinions than just me. So that is why I feature other reviews and other comments and stuff of that nature. So Warren here says, wild horses I'm not worried about. It's these goddamn cannibals. That's one of the ridiculous lines in the book. This is funny. He says, well loved by horror connoisseurs as a classic about a small town cannibal cult, Feast was one that I could not, quote, stomach. Not because of the gore or violence, but because I literally just couldn't stand the main character any longer. I will say Charlie was so annoying at points. And then this is funny. Masterton was either drunk or high while writing this story because there is so much silliness and stupidity in the narrative that would be charming in its naivety if the book didn't take itself so seriously. Here it is. Yeah, Charlie discovers a gruesomely mangled body and is attacked by a machete-wielding dwarf yelling, "Ska!" That's funny enough, but then minutes later, Charlie is driving in his Oldsmobile singing along to Bob Seger on the radio. Yep, just a typical day in Connecticut. Ridiculous. Also, if we go a little bit further down, he talks about New Orleans and how, you know, he does feel that Masterton almost groups every Cajun into this book in the same category. Like, he does group the French cult, this French dining society, with people who are Cajun French. And there is a big difference between, like, traditional Cajun and Cajun French. The funny thing is, guys, me as in Kelsi, not this review I'm reading, I am part Cajun French. So I was like, oh my God, they're mentioning Cajun French in the book. Like, that is me. My family are Cajun French. My mom, her parents, they grew up in an area of Louisiana called Vacherie, which is a country type of area. So Vacherie, a lot of people there speak, or used to speak, not as popular now, but they speak Cajun French. And Cajun French is big there. And in fact, and this is what I would call my grandparents, it's Cajun French names for grandparents. My mama and my papa both spoke Cajun French before they ever learned English. So at home, as kids, before they went to school, they spoke Cajun French at home, and they learned English in school. So how cool is that? So as a kid growing up, my cousins and I would hear my grandparents speak Cajun French at home, and when they wouldn't want us to hear stuff. So we would hear that, like that was a thing that would always be done at our grandparents' house. And we would be like, what are they saying? What are they trying to hide from us? Also, my papa actually, went overseas for like one of the wars, and he helped by interpreting French. But, traditional French is a little different than Cajun French, but my papa was able to still be a translator during the war and like interpret French stuff for the army. So I thought that was kind of cool that he did that. But yes, there's a lot of Cajun French stuff mentioned in this book, including stuff, just general New Orleans references as well. But this review that I'm reading from Warren on Goodreads right now, just to switch back to it really quick, he's saying that he just doesn't like the way that Masterton is using Cajun French in the book. He said, Cajun culture became romanticized around 1984, but it also became bastardized around the world. He says, I have Cajun ancestry as well as European French heritage, and believe me, two cultures are very different. Masterton didn't seem to know this, despite apparently doing serious research into the I can't even read any of this, research into all of this, old school French stuff. He keeps referring to the Moussettes as Cajun. The history he gives these characters is far from Cajun. They also speak classic French, which is very different from the Cajun dialect, where they hardly bother to conjugate their verbs and have a lot more borrowed words and phrases from other languages. Yeah, and there's like a lot more slang in Cajun French, let's say. Masterton would have you believe that the French people living below the Mason-Dixon line means Cajun. Hell, he seems to think that anybody in Louisiana is Cajun, speaks fluent Cajun French, plays accordion, and practices voodoo. Incidentally, they worship Satan too, those crazy mixed-up voodoo-loving Cajuns. Did you know that? Perhaps you think I'm taking this a bit too personally, but seriously, this is no small gripe, since it matters so much to the plot and resolution. There's an irony to getting the cultures all mixed up here, and if you've read the book and know how it ends, you know exactly what I'm talking about. An irony because the cult gets the whole, thing about the worship of their Bible wrong, and the whole prophecy wrong. So I do agree with that he did seem to kind of group Cajuns into one category. And he does say the conspiracy elements make this book feel like a thriller parody more than a horror novel. And I will say, even Will Erickson, the co-writer, I can speak, of Paperbacks from Hell, Will Erickson even said that it read more like a thriller. I do agree with that very much. But Warren said that he did like some of the humor in the book and some of the ridiculousness in the book, and that's what I like too. So yeah, I would say that if you didn't like this book, I would still give other Masterton books a chance, because personally I liked Walker's better than this. But still zany, still ridiculous in ways, still ridiculous sex scenes, still just ridiculous to believe parts, but I still think that Walker's just had a better balance. Both books are kind of long, though, I will say. Walker's and Feast / Ritual, both books are kind of lengthy. I was hoping I had my book Walkers nearby, but I don't, just to show you guys how big Walkers is compared to, when I picked this book up, I was like, okay, it's not going to be that bad. It doesn't look that long, but it is long. This is 300 and I think over 50 pages. 358 pages long, and that is why I say it could have been shorter. It could have been at least 100 to 150 pages shorter. And not only I said that, if you're just joining us now, my friend Katie also said that like just a few minutes ago in her Goodreads review. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up soon because I feel bad. I haven't marked a lot of passages in the book. I want to make sure you all have your opinions heard because it's not just about my opinion here. That's why I read the reviews. I want you guys to shout out your rating. What did you think about it? Are you going to give Masterton another chance if you didn't like this? Or did you love this? And what did you love about it if you did love it? I want to hear specifics before we wrap everything up. This isn't going to be one of our longer book stream discussions because again, I just feel like there's not much to say besides like the surface level. There's not like a big meaning behind this besides maybe be careful of how you interpret things. I think that was kind of like a nod, wink, wink type of deal that Masterton was trying to say. Like, religion can be interpreted in a number of ways. You're not supposed to take things literally. I think that might have been part of the message of the book. But I think also he was just trying to have fun with it and, put everything out there, be, zany and kind of over the top and have some shock value in the book, which it definitely had. It definitely had the shock value. I just actually expected even more shocking scenes from what I heard. Like if I would have gone in having read that blog post by Grady Hendrix that I read you guys, I would have been even more disappointed. Luckily, I only read like the snippet on Goodreads of what Grady Hendrix had to say and whatever he said in Paperbacks from Hell when I originally read that book, whatever he said about Feast in there. That's all I had to compare in terms of, what to think about the book going into it. Maybe it would have been better if I would have went into the novel fresh without any preconceived notions because I thought it was going to be freaking going 100 miles per hour the entire time. But there was just a lot more of a lull at times than I expected going in. And I think that's why even Will Erickson said that it reads more like a thriller because thrillers are usually fast paced, but at the same time, some thrillers are just, kind of more concentrated on the mystery versus like gore and craziness because there are times where I just thought that the gore would be more not to rhyme that's not Kelly is here and she says sorry to be late and I didn't read the book. Well, Kelly, I don't know, I know how you like more action and plot driven books. I'm not sure how you'd feel about this book, if you'd like it or not. Like there were some fun parts for sure and entertaining parts, but at the same time you have to kind of slog through some stuff to get there, to be honest with you. Now, I will say there are some things that pop up that make it worthwhile, like, while you're going. It's not like you have to wait to the last bit to get there. There are some things along the way that make it entertaining. It just feels like sometimes there are things that could have been omitted completely, and it would have been a lot tighter and easier to read, if that makes sense. I don't want it to get, you to get it spoiled if you don't want it to be. So just warning you now that we're like in the midst of talking spoilers, but nothing like too major. We already kind of talked about the big spoiler, which was the ending, which I personally liked. So again, guys, we're not going to stream much longer. I'm going to stream much more about the Book of the Damned. That's a tongue twister. About the Book of the Damned. The title is Book of the Damned by D.A. Fowler. That book was great. I loved that book. I cannot wait to talk about it. And I can't wait to be joined by Alex, the bookubus, to discuss what we thought of it because we did a big buddy read together. Overall, Katie said she enjoyed the outlandish plot, would definitely give his other works a try in the future. Now, Graham Masterton, I've heard a lot of people reading his newer books. They really seem to like his newer books. I have not read anything newer by him because this book, let's see when it was released, published, I should say. This was published in 1988, Feast/Ritual. Walkers was published in 1989. So very close together. Those are the two I read. So both books I read by him were from the 80s. I would love to see how his style has changed, or if it's changed at all, since then. Because he does release newer work. And in fact, I was subscribed to two like book subscription packages. One was Nightworms and one was the Abominable Book Club. And I can't remember which one included a Graham Masterton novel. I think 2 Graham Masterton novels. And of course, it's not in this room. I have it in my living room on my bookcase. I think one was called In God We Trust. Let me look up that. But that's a newer Graham Masterton book, I believe, and that was one that I received. So I would be interested in seeing how his writing style has evolved, if it has at all, since the 80s, because that's all I have experience with in terms of Masterton novels. All right, so let's see. In God We Trust. Is that it? By. I bet you that's not it. It's something like that. I wonder if it'll pop up if I just search for that. Gosh darn. I'll just look up Graham Masterton on Goodreads and see if I can find what I'm talking about. So while I'm doing that, guys, make sure you drop your final thoughts. Kelly says she doesn't know if she'd get to Ritual anytime soon anyway. I just don't know if you'd like it. It's hard to tell who would like what. Because, as you know, Kelly, you have tons of experience with old school horror. It's not an unusual thing for some of these old school paperbacks from Hell type of reads to be slow burns. And for them to take their time and to really, make you work to get to the final climax of it. And to just be slow in general. Another book like that, which we read, by the way, for people who are watching who don't know, Kelly, who's here right now, Kelly Hooked on Books, check out her channel. She has a book club she runs, and we read paperbacks from Hell there, and it's called the From Hell Book Club. One of the books we read was Halo by Chet Day, which is another book in paperbacks from Hell featured in that nonfiction book. And so that book as well is also slower paced and takes forever to get to the climax. But Feast has a lot more action than Halo, I will say that. All right, Graham Masterton, where is your newer books? I want to see the names. I'm going right now. Hold on. Sort by publication year. Yes. All right. The Children God Forgot is what I'm trying to think of. Yes, and Pax just shouted out in the comments. Thank you, Pax. Did you read that one, Pax? I thought you did. Yes, you did. Okay, so Pax says, The Children God Forgot, wild. Turd explosion. Oh my gosh, that sounds wild. So I own that book. And I'm intrigued by Pax's description of this book. I would really like to read that. It was released. I keep saying released. It was published in 2021. Let me show you guys. I have it up right here on Goodreads. Let me show you. Circle it here. This is what I'm talking about. Let's take a look at it. But as you guys can see, he's very prolific. He's got newer books, as you can see here. So this has a 3.79 rating. Funnily enough, Feast and Ritual has the same rating on Goodreads as this one, even though this one is much newer. This one says, a rash of strange and horrifying bursts sweeps through London in a new horror thriller from master of the genre, Graham Masterton. Series of strange bursts. A young woman is rushed to the hospital with stabbing pains. The chief surgeon performs a C-section and delivers a catastrophically malformed fetus that is somehow alive. Please pardon my fumbling. A devastating attack. Sewage engineer Gemma is plunged into a ghostly darkness in the tunnel where she works. She escapes, but her boss goes missing in the chaos. He's later found alive, but his legs have been severed and his eyes pulled out. Ooh, that sounds good. A supernatural threat. DC Jerry and DS Jamila of the Supernatural Squad must team up once more to solve the mystery and save the city. But if they are to succeed, first they must delve into the dark arts of witchcraft. This sounds marvelous. Pax gave it 5 stars. Wow, this book had so much going on. Detectives, paranormal, body horror, what a wild ride. I'm kind of wanting to read this now. So is this part of a series, Pax? Do you know? It looks like it is, guys. So this looks like it's the second book in a series, I'm guessing, of this, paranormal squad. So the series is about DC Jerry and DS Jamila. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing those characters wrong. But now I am wanting to read this. I wonder if it matters if you read the other books in the series or if you just read them as standalones. I don't know if anyone knows about that. Yeah, it looks like the first one in the series is from 2018, Ghost Virus. But this is intriguing to me. I kind of want to read this now. Okay. Kelly says, I agree. A lot of vintage horror are super slow. Learned that with Such Nice People. So, Such Nice People is a good example of a slow burn, but I like the character building. To me, Such Nice People. Where are you? I'm going to grab it so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Whoa. I do not want to knock over my stuff. Such Nice People by Sandra Scopatone. It's hard to say her last name. This is also notorious. There's a certain scene at the end. I do think the journey is worth it in the end for this book. Like the end and the shed scene specifically. Very hard to find. So I feel bad kind of promoting this book so much, but oh god, it was so much fun. I will say, as Kelly says, yes, it is a slow burn, but I think the characters are more compelling. It's like a family, and there's typical marriage drama in the beginning where between the husband and wife of the family, the matriarch and the patriarch of the family, and the kids are going through their own thing, and so there's like some stuff going on. It takes its time. We get to know the characters, but I think it was worth it. And I like these characters better than Charlie. And Charlie is our main character from the book we're talking about today. So to me, the characters in here were more compelling than the main character here, who is just absurd and over the top, but still fun in the end. And again, the ending of Ritual made it worth it as well, because at least I liked the very, very end personally. Also, another really kind of heralded book and touted book is The Auctioneer. And Kelly says The Auctioneer is also a slow burn, and that's one that I want to read. That is also right here. Luckily, I have examples of all these books. So this book that Kelly is mentioning right here in her comment, The Auctioneer, I have not yet read it, but do want to. Kelly is saying that this is also a slow burn, which I've heard. And I've heard that it's some people don't even classify it as pure horror. But I'm still intrigued about this. I still want to pick this up at some point, even though it's slower. So as Kelly and I just said, that is like a trait of slow horror. It can, of old horror. I'm reversing it. I'm being dyslexic. So a trait of older horror is that it's slower. And to me, it's okay, but it's easier to stomach in some books than in others, if that makes sense. And I don't know what the big difference is. For instance, another older book that I just read, The Cartoonist, which I did have fun reading, but parts were slower too during that one, and parts took time to examine, grief and stuff that was going on in the main character's life. More of an examination of emotions as well at the time. So it's like some books, it's easier to deal with that slowness than in others. And I honestly don't know what makes the difference for me. Why some books I enjoy it more and I could be along for the ride, and other books I'm just like, I can't stand this. Get there, get there, get there. I don't know about you guys. If you know why you feel a certain way about an older horror book that's slow versus another, drop it in the comments if, there's a distinction where you're like, I like older books that concentrate, on a family and examine the family life, or I like slower books that are more extreme to where they're not slow at all. And so it's completely different than a book like this, to where it's like go, go, go. Like for instance, an older horror book that we also read for Kelly's book club, Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright. That book was crazy. That book, there was not a slow moment in that book. And it was extreme. Like when I say extreme, it was in your face, extreme in every way. Extreme sex, extreme violence, just extreme ideas, extreme in every way. So to me, that one is the complete opposite of a lot of old school books that I've been reading, in that it was never slow for a moment. So it's not like across the board that every older book is slow, but a lot of them seem to be. But again, just to reiterate, some of the books I can take it, some of the books I'm just like, I can't take it. And I don't know why that is. Pax says that The Children God Forgot by Graham Masterton, the newer book written by him, which is a part of a larger series of books, she says it's the second book in the series, but it can stand alone, which is good. And she says, a phrase that broke me, toilet paper phyllo dough. What the hell? So that's said in The Children God Forgot? That's an actual line in the book? I'm kind of intrigued now. I want to read this book by Graham Masterton and see how crazy it is. It does look long. So again, I own this book, The Children God Forgot, and it looked kind of like a chunker. Not that I'm scared of chunkers. How do you guys feel? Are you intimidated by longer books? I know I am. I just kind of get overwhelmed at looking at it, and I'm like, can I really do it? Even a book this isn't extremely long. Oh gosh, I'm dropping books, and old books too. God no. So even books like The Dark Half by Stephen King that I'm reading right now, I would consider this a longer book. I guess I don't know if I would classify it as a chunker. Like to me, a chunker is like 500, 600, 700 pages. This is 431 pages. But even before I started this, I started to get a little nervous. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to finish it in time. How long is this going to take me? It's like a mindset. And I don't know how to get out of that mindset to where I don't worry about the length of the book. How do you guys deal with that? Do you even worry about the length? Do you even look at it before you start? Do you pay attention to that at all? Does it affect your reading enjoyment? Does it affect you putting a book like that on your TBR? Do you shy away from that? Do you wait for a month where you don't have a lot planned to put a longer book on your TBR? Let me know below. I'm interested in that, how different people think about all that stuff. So yes, before we wrap up, I want to grab my book that just fell. It's bothering me that it's an older book and it fell on the floor and it's killing me. So excuse me. Sorry, guys. This fell on the floor and I don't want it to freaking get hurt because it's a good book. Luckily, it didn't get any more hurt than what it already was. All right, guys. So as we wrap up and I'm waiting for you guys to comment some more stuff about how you feel about different things, I do want to say that we have our books picked out for the month of May. So once again, I picked 2 books to have book discussions of. That means that there's 2 technical official book club reads for my book club. And you guys can choose to read one, the other, both, neither. It's up to you. The reason that there's 2 is so that you guys have the option and you have more choices. If you're not feeling one of the books, well then just read the other one. If you're not feeling either, well just join us for a future month. And if you've already read one, then it doesn't matter. You could still join us for the live stream discussion because you don't have to worry about spoilers. So the 2 books we're going to be discussing and that we're reading for May will be Offspring Off-Season, Offspring, I think, is the sequel. Off-Season by Jack Ketchum, which, of course, is about cannibals, just like the Ritual is. So it'll be fun to compare and contrast since, we just read this book about, a cannibalistic cult. How will a different type of cannibal book work out for us? And another thing to compare is that I don't know how many of you guys joined me for The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum, but that was also a recent read for us for this book club that is meeting right now. And that one was super emotional, super draining, but also extreme. Now, Off-Season by Jack Ketchum, same author, and still an extreme subject matter and apparently an extreme book, but just not as emotional in terms of its story. It's more on the surface horror. It's more pure horror. It's not like a big overarching message it's trying to send or examine, the human psyche and examine human behavior type of deal. So to me, it's that'll be interesting to compare how Off-Season by Jack Ketchum will be. So that's one of the picks. The other pick, if you're more interested in this other one, or if you want to do both, is The Cellar by Richard Layman. So I already mentioned Richard Layman in this stream that you're watching right now earlier. I don't know if all of you were here at that time, but I said that Richard Layman is known, for kind of being a gross guy in terms of he's always writing these sex scenes, which Masterton does, by the way. Masterton's the same way, but for some reason, only Richard Layman gets called out for this. He describes boobs, for instance, in great detail. It's ridiculous detail. Why? It's out of nowhere. He's just describing boobs and it's ridiculous. And it's all of his characters are over sexualized, but I don't think Layman is alone in this. However, some of his books are better than others I've learned recently. Ollie over at Criminali, check out his channel. He's wonderful. He told me that The Cellar is bonkers. And so when I heard that, I was like, I kind of want to nominate it for a potential book club read. So it came in second place. So, not as many people voted for it, but I'm still going to have a book, discussion of it, a live stream for it. So if you guys want to join in on that one, please do so. It should be a lot of fun. I've heard crazy things about that. It's also a part of a series of books, but it's the first book in the series. So it'll be no problem to talk about it. And if you guys don't want to continue on with the series, you decide to read The Cellar, you don't like it, well, then so be it. You gave it a try. Speaking of Will Erickson, who co-wrote Paperbacks from Hell, I mentioned him a few times. Will Erickson hates Richard Layman. He hates Richard Layman. So we'll be talking a little bit about Will Erickson's opinion on Richard Layman when we talk about The Cellar, because if I remember correctly, I'm going to type it in here. By the way, Will Erickson runs a wonderful blog. It's called Too Much Horror Fiction.blogspot.com. That's where you could find it. if you're not following him and you like old school paperback horror, you should be following him because he is so knowledgeable. It's insane. I mean, I love reading his blog, and I just love to, see what he's picking up on his Instagram. He is a collector like me and like many of you guys watching. So he collects these old school paperbacks. But not that long ago, he posted about giving Richard Layman yet another chance and still hating Richard Layman after, giving him like a 10th chance. Let's see, where is it? Older posts. I think he read The Cellar is the funny part, which we're about to read as part of our club reads. So I think that's kind of funny. Okay, here it is. No, he read The Beast House. But I think he also read The Cellar at one point. Because I remember looking on Goodreads and he gave it like a 1 star. I'm just trying to see, like, he has so many funny, like, things that he wrote in the blog post about, like, how much he hates him. He said the storyline of a secret sex diary. So it takes place in the Beast House, which is kind of in the Cellar's, like, I think, universe. So I think the Beast House is one of the books in the series that follows the Cellar book. But, here he says, you gotta believe me, I gave cult favorite Richard Layman another try because I wanted to give him a fair shake. Over the years I've been writing this blog, I've read and disliked 4 of his novels and a couple short stories. Each time I've reviewed something by him, I've been told by fans, you should read this one, you should read that one. This is one of his weaker titles, but what I've found is those bits of advice are distinctions without a difference. I read all of the free excerpts I could find on Amazon, and The Beast House is no exception. He says, first published by Paperjacks in 1987, it's the first sequel to his debut novel, The Cellar. It is failure in its purest form. I love how brutal he is in like the review of it. So I love discussing different opinions like that. So if you join us for The Cellar, we will be talking more about Will Erickson because he has reviewed The Cellar. Because I could see a link here to click on his review of The Cellar. So we'll be talking about what Erickson thinks, what we think, what other people think, like Grady Hendrix and other people. So it'll be a whole mix of, different opinions, which I love. So guys, I'm going to have so those are the 2 books for May, which we will have live stream discussions for in June. The dates are set for June right now. So again, it's a month after, but only a little bit after May, because it's at the very beginning of June. But we have one more book to discuss that we read for April, which is Book of the Damned by D.A. Fowler, as I said. And it'll be interesting to see how the stream is and the discussion is with another co-host. So I'm just starting to do that. So hopefully you guys enjoy someone coming on with me and talking about books for the Book of the Damned. So again, I'll be joined by Alex the Bookubus, and it might be something I do in the future if you guys like me being joined by other booktubers. If anyone is interested in co-hosting in the future, let me know. If a book really strikes your fancy and you say, I'd love to co-host with you, Kelsi, for this future book discussion, please let me know. So right now, what we have to come off season, that is the name, by Jack Ketchum, and The Cellar by Richard Layman. So if either of those kind of strikes your fancy and you would like to co-host, let me know. Drop me a line on Instagram. You could find me there at SuperKickingIt. And, we could discuss if it'll work out in terms of the dates and everything like that. But I'm totally up for that because I really love interacting and, collabing with other booktubers. And I want to do it more. And also, I'm sure you guys are tired of just hearing me ramble on during these book discussions. It'd be nice to have a different voice than just me. It is what it is. So guys, I'm about to wrap up here. And before I do want to say this is a good point. Kelly says, she likes to do longer books as buddy reads, helps her push through the longer books. That is a good kind of motivating factor that I wouldn't have thought of. But I just discovered, I did this buddy read with Alex, which I told you guys we're going to discuss Book of the Damned together. We did that together, and what we did was we split it up in chapters. So some buddy reads I've done, it's like, read as, at your own pace and talk together, when you want on the Discord or in an Instagram chat. When I buddy read with Alex, we had certain chapters we read per day. So like day 1, read chapter 1 through 4, then 5 through 8 on the second day. I did like that a lot. And I think that would be a good way to do a longer book so that you ensure you finish the book And you could still kind of read other books. Like, so if you say, I want to read this long book, I'm going to read chapters 1 through 7, this week, and then 7 through whatever the next week. And then you could still try to, fit in other books around your designated chapters. I think that could be a good way too to tackle longer books. So good idea, Kelly. Buddy reads. It's a good way to tackle these long books. Very true. Very good hack, I guess. All right, guys, I'm wrapping up. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the book and it wasn't too hard for you to get through. Appreciate you guys joining me for this live stream discussion of it. And again, if you're watching after the fact, drop your thoughts of Ritual below and what you thought, what you gave it as a rating, and if you'd read more by Masterton in the future. But I'm definitely going to keep giving him a chance. In fact, The Children God Forgot, I'm officially putting that next on my Masterton list whenever I get to it. I don't know when, probably next year. But still, I'm definitely going to check it out. Thanks, Pax, for telling me how wild it was. By the way, guys, we've got lots of people who are fellow booktubers here that were in the chat today. We had Pax. Check out her channel, Pax Panic. Wonderful YouTube channel, underrated as hell. I already told you guys about Kelly Hooked on Books. Wonderful channel as well. Katie has an awesome Discord, not Discord. She's got an awesome Instagram channel. I got my Discord on the mind. She just changed her handle on her Instagram to, I believe it's Death by Paperbacks. So find Katie on Instagram at Death by Paperbacks. So definitely check her out. Mr. Morningstar was here. Wonderful YouTube channel, great editing skills. Check him out. Anyone else I forgot, I'm sorry, but those are the definite YouTubers I know of who have been in the chat today. Check out all their channels. Again, check out Katie on Instagram. All wonderful content creators here. Thank you all so very much. And thank you guys who are watching after the fact. Really appreciate your time. Please consider giving a like. That helps with the analytics. Leave a comment, even if it's just an emoji, that also helps. But for this time, guys, that's it for me. Till next time, you know what you can do. Keep on killing it. Bye, guys. Thank you again. Bye. Happy Sunday, or whatever day you're watching this if you're watching after. Bye.